10-4, Tucker, not rolling.
I heard a dispatch come over the police radio describing an incident on a local lake with a possible boat being capsized. I was about the third person on the scene. And the victim was about 65 feet offshore, standing on his tiptoes on a rock, just barely keeping his face above water. I stripped down to my underwear, tied a rope around myself, and got in the water. As I got alongside of him, he literally jumped on my head, pushed me under. I got free of him, got an arm around him. The people on shore pulled me back in the shore. He was conscious, but he was completely exhausted. He had nothing left. There was never a question about whether or not you go in the water. It was absolutely a routine response to the situation. It made sense. And that's because we train and we train and we train. That takes the fear away from the situation. It takes the trepidation away from it. It allows you to do the right thing.
The level of volunteerism that he dedicates himself to and the time that he spends in just training himself to be that high level of volunteer, whether it's through the American Red Cross, the fire services, in emergency management, there's nobody better.
It's a really freezing cold day. I had been assigned to another job and that job had been canceled. So they had sent me over to this location to help Todd and the other mechanics. And I had just pulled into the yard, and when I saw Todd come out and say that the lead mechanic had fallen down and had passed out. Just came around right on the corner, and I saw the employee down, which I've known for over 35 years, and couldn't believe that he was down. And he was. There was no pulse, there was no breathing. I performed 2 breaths, 30 compressions, still no pulse, still no breathing. Did 2 more breaths, 30 more compressions, and just about at the 30th compression, he started to revive. He started to move and actually come to.
Everything goes so fast, but your training, it may seem like you don't want to go through those classes every year, but without even knowing, you just do it instinctively, and you look at it afterwards and realize what you've done.
We do first aid, CPR, and it's every year it's 4 hours each, and it stays with you. You know, if you do it enough, and actually when the time came to be needing it, it was there.
See which phase is over.
The message that I heard clearly was that the training was certainly there, and it really fell into place at the right moment. So they were very confident, they were very knowledgeable, and they carried through.
Back in 1983, I finished a residency in emergency medicine in California, and I decided to move back to the Northeast. I came to Mount Kisco, New York, and took a job in a community hospital. And because I was trained in emergency medicine, the administrator of the hospital figured, here's the guy I'm going to have work with the ambulances. I soon found that in a community such as Mount Kisco and the surrounding area, the people that provided emergency services were almost 100% volunteers. I got involved with my local volunteer ambulance corps in Katona, and I found that these people were starving for education, very interested in learning, and totally committed to what they were doing.
It's one of the great joys of working with him is he's always been the vanguard of establishing good relations with these volunteers and these folks who do the pre-hospital care when they come in, and teach them, work with them, learn from them.
I've been teaching in the community for 25 years, and one of the most gratifying things that I've had professionally is getting involved in the community. As much as I love working in the hospital, it's sort of like the icing on the cake to take that back out into the community and do something useful, just like the Red Cross exists to do. And I think we will all feel better if we give some of our expertise back to improve the quality of life for all of the people that we live with.
I'll never forget any of the calls I go out on the boat, but this one I'll really never forget because I was working at the YMCA lifeguarding. Just as I was getting ready to change out of my bathing suit and my work clothes, the call came in for a man who jumped off the Tappan Zee Bridge. Immediately I came down to the fireboat along with 3 other guys, and we took the boat straight out and we spotted him right away. It was very choppy out there, so I called out to him to see if he was responsive. He was not responsive, and that's when I told my guys I was jumping in to go get him. They hooked up a safety line to me, and I jumped in, and I swam over to the man. Using my lifeguarding skills, I grabbed a hold of him, and I brought him back closer to the boat, and I instructed my crew members how to safely bring him onto the boat, and we came back to the dock, and he got his medical attention, and I got sent to the chief's car to warm up.
She's always the first one there, and we could always depend on her. Right in the water, no regard for herself, just jumped in. The Hudson River is not a joke. You know, people think, it's only a river. It's one of the most dangerous rivers in the world, to be quite honest with you. So you have to stay up on your practice and your drilling.
Without Red Cross, I wouldn't have nearly as much training to do what I do out there. Red Cross is a very important part of my life, and to continue to update my training so that I can do what I do now. I do it for my community. This is where I grew up, this is where I was born and raised, and I like to give back to my community.
Games for Heroes is actually a charity that we send handheld video games and the devices that play them to the troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. Our goal became to send a handheld video game to every troop out there who wanted one.
Both of us in our family history have had people who have served in the military, and so we've always had a great respect for people who serve our country. And so what we did was we went and started writing letters. From there, we realized that the most requested item was handheld video game devices, which is what Games for Heroes is today.
Actually, this box we have kind of stationed throughout the school at times, and people just kind of throw in games, used games. This one's used, I guess, and people just bring in things that they're not using anymore. We had these actually in fire stations, police stations, places like that. They're willing enough in a community to put it in their Game Boy and support the troops. And I mean, it's really not as daunting to start as it may seem, because we love doing this. We love doing it for the troops, and I think that's what the Red Cross is about.
I would say it's definitely worth it. Volunteering, taking out our own time, because I mean, Peter and I have been doing this for a year, and it's really rewarding to feel that you're doing something that's helping other people's lives.